The first time my knees gave out in public, it wasn't before investors or in front of a hostile boardroom or late at night on a neon-lit Tokyo street, clinging to a cheap can of beer. It was on stage with sticky palms, the smell of distilled resin and floor polish stinging in my nostrils. A cheap kawaii grand piano sprawled at the center of the auditorium, glossy black and somewhat battered, mocking my trembling hands. My parents sat in the third row back straight, their anticipation drawn tight. The Segusa sisters, Mina and Yuki, smirked across the aisle, already whispering about my chances. The jury, grim and silent, took their notes. I had practiced Chopin's Ballade No. 1 for months, shifting each night quietly so as not to disturb our downstairs neighbor's baby, fingers numb beneath the dim light of my desk lamp. It was supposed to be perfect. The note started well, then an unseen fog wrapped my thinking, and I lost all sense of place. Two misplaced chords, then another. My left hand seized, a squall of panic surging up my throat, making my ears roar so loudly I could barely hear my own mistake. Something in me stuttered, like a gear slipping, and I froze, helpless, eyes searching for rescue in the bored faces of the jury. Not one of them looked up. That entire auditorium held its breath. My mother's face was carefully blank, my father's mouth clamped in dismay. My lips moved, trying to recall what came next, but the entire score had evaporated. I felt their judgment hit me like cold water. For an impossibly long moment, I sat paralyzed, the keys shining up at me as if daring me to go on. Finally, when a gentle cough echoed in the aisles, I forced myself up, bowed a little too deeply, and staggered off stage with my head down. It sounds dramatic, but no fire or thunder came, just a slow, steady freezing over. Even as the auditorium doors closed behind me, I heard the future speculation. Whispers, will she try again? Too nervous, so disappointing. She never was so musical, my aunt would later confide in the kitchen, palms pressed to the counter. Maybe she can focus on something practical now. That night at home, my parents set a glossy university prospectus before me at dinner, pushing the miso soup aside. You could try law, Rika, my father said, making it sound both gentle and impossible, as if he were offering free passage out of shame. Not everyone is meant for music. Each glance from my cousins or neighbors, each forced smile at PTA meetings etched itself deep. The next day I was summoned to the teacher's lounge, a tiny room with peeling posters of alumni successes. Mr. Sato, my advisor, patted my shoulder. You are talented but competitive, world. We must be realistic, Nee. I stopped playing for people after that. The piano became a glossy coat rack, sheet music quietly gathering dust. Instead, I filled myself with numbers, algorithms, case studies. I joined robotics club, poured myself into mock trial, the anonymous satisfaction of scoring well on standardized tests. But there was a shape missing inside me, a sense of unfinished business, some melody that refused to resolve. When the US startup boom filtered into Japan, people my age buzzed about disruption and innovation. I clung to the fringes at first, watching from the safe distance of part-time jobs and college busywork. I ordered ramen with old friends who joked about me ever taking a risk again. You launch a company with your nerves. Yuji grinned between slurps, as if imagining me combusting right there at the counter. Stick to salaryman life, Rika. Entrepreneurship's for weirdos. Secretly, though, I had been sketching ideas on the backs of napkins, hiding in the tatami-matted corner of my favorite 24-hour cafe, imagining how to build something of my own, something to prove I could create what nobody else could see. Nights were filled with lines of code and frustration, the terror of blank screens spinning into hash maps and UI wireframes. I didn't dare mention it at home. Every time I returned to my parents' house in Ota, the dining room was a minefield. My uncle brought up my short-lived piano career. Your mother says you are busy with some American company now, he snorted, teeth flashing. Not real work, this app building. Tokyo is full of genius dropouts these days. They always come crawling back. I learned to smile, to let it roll over me. Inside, though, I kept shoving pieces of myself onto servers and Git commits, chasing the sense of completion that music used to lend me, a harmony in code, a rhythm of deployment, tiny victories at 3 a.m. Most mornings I'd wake from uneasy dreams. Sometimes I was back on that stage, knees buckling, only now I was presenting pitch decks to bored faces. I watched others around me grow satisfied with steady progress, secure small careers. My parents wanted the same for me. When my first attempts flopped, when servers crashed or a co-founder bylaid, the calls home were met with tight-lipped concern or, worse, relieved silence. Just come back, Nee, my mother murmured once after a particularly brutal round of layoffs, hinting at a teaching position at her friend's school. I hung up strung and stared at my half-lit apartment, the neon humming outside. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. It was the day a bank rejected my loan application, a sheet of paper delivered by polite courier service, reading in blunt characters, "We regret to inform you." I lay on my back, studying ceiling cracks, feeling each rejection twist tighter inside me. Tokyo's constant dance, the stink of shoyu and exhaust, the hum of endless activity, felt suddenly overwhelming, like I was floating above it, useless. I got up and walked the city, breathing cold spring air, watching the city's endless motion. Salarymen, schoolgirls, a brass quartet warming up outside Ebisu station. In the subway, I stared at strangers' faces reflected between passing stations. I thought about the recital, the absolute certainty, then the collapse. About my father's careful disappointment, my mother's sidelong glances, friends' easy laughter. You always fail at the moment it matters. But I couldn't leave it there. One night, exhausted head swimming, I realized the only thing left to lose was the last of my own fear. I stopped courting permission. If I was to be ridiculous, let it be by my own rules. I called up my university friend Kajiro. "I have an idea," I told him, voice trembling, prepared for laughter. Instead, he paused. "Let's hear it." We worked in secret at first, sharing clattering cups of coffee and greasy convenience store sandwiches in my dim apartment, code scrawled across whiteboards balanced on shoeboxes. I slept on the floor, stacks of reference books for a pillow, willing the product to become real. For months, we lived on rice, skipped rent, bartered odd jobs for cloud credits. My mother called, worried about the circles under my eyes. My father told me the neighbor's daughter had landed a job with a cosmetics giant. Maybe you could try too. Through all of it, the memory of the auditorium stayed lodged in my chest, a raw, frozen scar that pulsed whenever doubt pressed too close. Our breakthrough was almost accidental, a refactoring of a tool to automate customer onboarding for SaaS apps, a pilot client, then another. My Japanese was more hesitant than my code, but the workflow clicked, sudden traction, word spreading among mid-sized Tokyo software firms. Suddenly people called us instead of the other way around. I bootstrapped ruthlessly, declined countless pivot suggestions from skeptical mentors. Investors in black suits leaned forward, tapping their pens. "Does anyone really need this?" they'd ask sideways. I remembered their faces. Each no fueled me, not with rage but with a quiet, slow-burning defiance. The city changed around me as I grew my team. 2, 5, 10 people squeezed into a Shibuya co-working space, pushing updates as the sun came up. Vendors dropped off endless trays of bentos. Our Ikewa tutor corrected my emails, scowling over my business Japanese. There were weeks when I wanted to quit every single day, the weight of staff salaries and server bills settling over me like a lead blanket. I thought of home, of my parents' kitchen, my father looking at me over his glasses, calculating disappointment. The first time a major client signed, I cried, silent at my standing desk, relief so fierce it left me trembling. Every small win felt like a stone lifted from my chest, but the weight never left entirely. Word started to trickle back to Ota before I did, an article in a local business newsletter. Some neighbor's daughter sharing a LinkedIn post. My mother, cautious at first, called to ask about your company thing. Her tone was bewildered, skepticism softened by new uncertainty. "What is it really that you make?" she asked me. "It's complicated," I joked weakly. "Cloud software." She didn't try to hide that she didn't understand, but she listened. A few months later, a journalist with the Nikkei reached out. Their profile ran with a photo I hated, hair sticking up, too tired smile under harsh fluorescent lights. My inbox exploded. Old friends from the music club sent tentative congratulations. My sense of accomplishment felt brittle, unreal, as if it all might be snatched away any moment. But still, it grew. A second investment round, an integration partnership with a telecom company. All the metrics people cared about began to look right. 3 years after the first line of code, the Tokyo Tech District hosted a technology showcase, a formal stage, sharp lights overhead, streamed out to industry and press. They invited us to demo in front of a live audience. My back prickled remembering the old auditorium, how I had frozen up on stage, unable to move. I told nobody at home. Not my parents, not my old classmates, not the Segusa sisters with their careful lives and perfect resumes. I didn't want witnesses if I failed, but my co-founder, more trusting, sent the details out to our early supporters. The blast spread. 30 minutes before I went on, I scanned the audience, my parents, arms folded, looking uncertain among a clutch of friends and relatives, their faces half curious, half braced for embarrassment. I gripped the clicker, heart a drum in my throat, and stepped onto the stage. The screen behind me glowed, our logo a singular splash of blue. I turned toward the crowd, every muscle rigid, the blinding glare squeezing sweat from my temples. I outlined our progress, showing real customers, talking through the problem and the solution, fielding technical questions without scripts. I showed live deployments. Each metric, users, retention, profit, flashed on screen. I watched my father's mouth open, then close, saw my mother's hands twist in her lap, saw their brows furrow in recognition. The murmurs in the crowd, is that really her daughter? That's the one from OTA. Remember how she used to play piano. Then the demo. A customer's onboarding workflow processed in 30 seconds, the dashboard updating instantly, real data projected to the room. The moderator, a respected old Tokyo CTO, looked impressed. He turned to the jury, a panel of competing founders and investors. Very original, never seen anyone automate this problem so crisply. Congratulations, he said, voice ringing through the auditorium. The panel nodded. Hands clapped, unscripted and genuine. I bowed, no trembling this time, and heard not polite silence but a wave of applause, a foreign sound, vast and enveloping. Later off stage, my parents waited near the exit, uneasy. My father glanced over my head as if seeking someone more authoritative to verify what he'd just seen. I didn't realize, Rika, he started quietly, the words slow and brittle. We saw your name in the paper, but this, I didn't think it was so real. My mother reached tentatively for my hand. The old neighbor, squinting at his phone, muttered, she's on Nikkei ni. Rika-chan from next door. Behind them, the Segusa sisters hovered, eyes shining with curiosity edged with awe. Mina stepped forward, expression unreadable. You were always so stubborn. I see it worked out. I bit back a nervous laugh, the urge to explain, to minimize, to apologize. Instead, I just nodded. It took a while. For once, the silence didn't chill me, it felt ripe, ready to be filled. The next weekend, my father called the family together for dinner at the old house, the extended clan, the uncles who had rolled their eyes at apps, the cousins who had won prizes in sensible fields. My mother lit candles as if for New Year's, and my father insisted on toasting, awkwardly, with a bottle of sake reserved for rare occasions. We are proud, you know, he said, voice thick with unspent emotion. Maybe we didn't always say so. This time nobody mocked, nobody brushed me aside, even my aunt, the most biting skeptic, took me aside as we cleared plates. You were brave, she murmured, even if I never understood why you bothered. I squeezed the dish rag, the last 3 years spinning through my mind, every sleepless night, every sharp doubt. It wasn't vindication, not exactly. But in that cluttered, noisy kitchen, surrounded by skeptical faces thawed by simple evidence, I felt myself begin to unfreeze. After the meal, my parents pressed old photos into my hand, me in recital dresses, hair in pigtails, sitting at the piano. Maybe one day you'll play again just for us, my mother suggested, soft. I thought about the old kawaii surely out of tune and wondered if my fingers could still piece together a melody. Perhaps I would. Not to prove anything, not to erase the old humiliation, just for me, for the shape of completion, the harmony rebuilt from fragments. Outside, the first cicadas of summer sang through the city, and Tokyo's endless neon blinked patiently, as if waiting for whatever I would decide next.